All right. Hello, everyone. My name is Jabari Owens-Bailey. I'm a curatorial education program manager here at Museum of Glass. And today, I have the pleasure of introducing Adeye Jean-Baptiste to give her presentation. This is our weekly visiting artist series, and where a visiting artist comes in with a proposal, and they present it to our hotshot team. And over the course of 5 days, from Wednesday through Sunday, they're in this hot shop creating the artist's work. And Adeye Jean-Baptiste was born and raised in Westchester, New York, and is a recent graduate of Alfred University, majoring in art and design. Since a young age, craft has always been a part of her life and something she is passionate about. Her current work is a culmination of the passion of art and craft using skills that she has developed over the years, such as beading, sewing, glassblowing, and kiln working, alongside her interest in the figure. Outside of art, she often finds herself involved in community-oriented practices, one of which is the Glass Artist Series, which she helped to co-create. The series brought in Black glass artists from across the country to demo and have week-long residencies at Alfred University. So I think Adeye is doing extraordinary work in both her artistic practice and also her social practice. And so I feel fortunate that we get to hear what she has to say. So she's going to give her presentation, and then afterwards, a little Q&A where you can ask some questions about Adeye's work. Anyway, without further ado, Adeye Jean-Baptiste.
Thank you, Jabari, for that wonderful introduction. Good afternoon, everyone. How are you? Did y'all not have your coffee this morning? Good afternoon, everyone. There we go. So as much as this is an artist talk, this is also a story about community and how our community came together to support a weird little alien girl. So before I even get into the talk, I want to make sure I give out my flowers to the amazing people who got me here. I want to start out by thanking the amazing tier here at the MOG, both in the hot shop and the larger museum. You guys have made me feel so welcome and included here. I'd also want to thank the amazing team over at Olympic Color Rod, who came out and supported me and gave me a bunch of amazing rod that allowed me to kind of really play with color this week, as well as all my friends who came out to support me, Krista, Max, and Henry. So thank you guys so much. So getting into the talk, a little background about me. I was born and raised in Westchester, New York, and I was really fortunate to have an amazing mother. So my mom immigrated to the US in the 80s from Ethiopia, and my mom has always been someone who has been extremely creative. She always valued the arts and always valued the power of public works. And so because of her support and energy behind that at an early age, I had my first studio. So this is my first studio in my parents' garage. Sitting next to me in the fabulous pink scarf is my older sister, Sanu. And we're having a very serious gallery opening. We have our artwork set up, and we have some beverages and snacks, and even charged a fee for our parents to come in and check out some of the work we had been making. Some of close-ups of my early work, me and mommy at the firehouse. So obviously I was very prolific at a very early age. But this is my childhood home, and so something that has always been very apparent to my parents and even to me is I've always been on the move. So this was early in the morning. My sisters and I woke up at 6 in the morning. We went outside and we started making an igloo. So movement has always been something that's played a huge role in my life, being outdoors, being active, creating, as well as later kind of getting mobile and getting on a scooter. So if I'm ever become a rapper, this would be the cover of my first album. But so, always going around and biking around, and later kind of getting into bottle rockets and space. And more specifically, as I grew a little bit older, I got interested in history and the history of people and movement. And so my mom and she took me to go to Ellis Island, and for obvious reasons, I didn't really see myself in that space because my parents had immigrated quite recently. And so I was really fortunate growing up. I got the chance to go check out Ethiopia, where my mom is from, and later Haiti, 2 weeks actually before the earthquake that happened there. I got to go and hang out with my cousins and my family. Zooming back into the suburbs of Westchester, specifically Scarsdale, New York, my parents always raised my sisters and I in a very interesting way. Even though we were American, and my parents always told us we were American and defined us as American, we still had aspects of their cultures. And so this is a photo of me coming of age and learning the coffee ceremony and kind of showing everyone all the amazing food that I made in preparation for the ceremony. So it's kind of weird in this suburban kind of white neighborhood. You have all these Ethiopian people getting together to kind of celebrate this really beautiful moment of womanhood for me. So that's kind of always played a role again in kind of how I was raised and how I looked at the world. So art has always played a huge role in my life, and I was really fortunate when I was in high school to actually get to travel quite a bit through the East-West Center. And this is really when I got to start working with communities on a larger scale and getting to travel. I was asked through the East-West Center to go out to Cambodia and actually made this mural with the students there. And so each student got to kind of put their handprint on there, and working together, we eventually made a tree. And this is me finishing it up. So with all those individual experiences, pushing them together, somehow in some crazy way, I ended up in glass. And it all has to do with an amazing woman named Betsy Murphy, who runs Gypsy Lane Glass Studio. In high school, they ended up cutting a lot of the art programs, and I wasn't able to do art in school, and I was kind of getting myself in some trouble. So what they ended up doing, my mom's friend, she was like, just come to the studio, come hang out. And I actually started fusing glass. There, she ended up encouraging me to apply to take some scholarships at Urban Glass in New York City, and that's where I had my first glassblowing opportunity. So please, I apologize for my interesting rap that's happening there, but still early on in my glass career, and this is actually my first cup. After doing glass for quite a bit of time, I ended up going to college, and in college I had the opportunity to actually do a bunch of really interesting internships and working at different places. One of the earliest spots I got to work at was Wet Dog Glass, and so Wet Dog is an amazing glass equipment manufacturer located in North Carolina, and so I got to go down there and work in all the different departments from our factory all the way to wiring. So I actually helped wire that control panel, so I'm very proud of myself for that. Another studio that was really impactful in terms of shaping my glass career was going to Chicago and working at Firebird Community Arts. The person that would be y'all's left is Kosi Barber. He's someone who works at that studio, and he was a really big brother to me. He helped me out a lot in my early days of making glass and really showed me the power of Black individuals within the glass space and all the things that they were capable of doing, as well as giving me an opportunity to really teach glass as well as make my own work early on in my glass career. So now that you guys have a little bit of background on me, we can go into my artistic practice. So I've always been someone who's been interested in graffiti art. I've always done graffiti, and as I've gotten older, for certain reasons, it's been less and less something that I'm able to do, but I still enjoy kind of 2D art. And so that's kind of come up in my sketch whiz. And so these are some of the sketches that I've had in my sketchbook of kind of thinking about the aliens and also thinking about text. Whenever I'm drawing, I always have some music playing on. So oftentimes the text that's in the sketches are kind of streams of consciousness based off of the music I'm listening to. But taking these sketches kind of as a blueprint, I ended up creating this kind of little fused figure, and this was the first one I made right before I went to college, and that's kind of translated in a lot of different ways in my work. So this was the first kind of little alien creature face that I made with some beads, and that later translated into these larger pieces of these alien girls, an alien mother and child, and another alien face. I've also played around with other types of beads, playing around with different plastic beads, creating halos and arches, as well as now currently in my beaded work, playing around with different kind of shapes as well as body parts. Another way that I've utilized these fused faces is in these mixed media pieces. I actually made all these little wooden pegs and put them in this metal wooden train, and I pull them around, kind of looking at taking these childhood toys and implementing these kind of contemporary alien faces within them. And this larger piece, if you end up going to the Bellevue in May, I think this piece will be there. It's part of Translations in Glass show there through Bullseye. But this larger piece also kind of utilizing these alien faces, talking about this idea of otherness and kind of having these faces all throughout the map, even if each of these little faces in their own little state is all by themselves. But when we take kind of a step back and we look at it from a larger spot, we're able to kind of see how they kind of make up a larger landscape. And no work would be kind of able to happen without the support of other people. So this is Eddie and Angela Bernard helping me deinstall after my senior show. So they were awesome and helped me kind of wrap up that piece. But this is also another close-up of some of the beaded pieces that are a part of that work. So I'd always utilized fused glass in my work, but going to college really pushed me to not only use blown glass in other ways and larger ways, but also kind of getting into sculpture. And so I got an opportunity in college to start to play around with these different forms. So this is one of the first aliens that I ever made. Very interestingly shaped. I used a bunch of powder and for it to make this guy, and from there it kind of translated to using mixed media pieces to kind of get more of the arms and the shapes that I want. So the body, the head, and the gun in this piece is all glass, but the arms are all made out of air ventilation tubing, and then there's rubber gloves. And then taking that piece that I made, then kind of abstracting it even further, only the head and the body is made out of glass, and then the arms were actually made out of wood, and then utilizing these crocheted and fibered figures that I had made throughout my time there at school, and finding these kind of matching hat and overalls of Thomas the Tank Engine, again, kind of talking about movement. Another airplane little figure that I made, which we're also kind of making today, another version of that guy, and then this kind of caterpillar dude smoking a little cigarette, and again, always utilizing the text, taking those sketches and bringing them into the three-dimensional space. So now that I've finished talking about my artistic practice, I kind of want to dive into my social practice. So during undergrad, not only did we have COVID, but we also had, sadly, this passing away of George Floyd and many other Black and brown individuals during that period of time and even before that. But it was a larger awakening for a larger part of America, and utilizing that time within college, I tried to kind of push forward an agenda that I'd always had of trying to see myself more within the glass community. And the way that I was able to do that was putting together the Black Glass Artist Series, working with my professor, Angus Powers, who is the guy with a weird squirrel hat. We collaborated and created a proposal, did some funding, and we were able to create the Black Glass Artist Series. So our first artist that we hosted was Kosi Barber. He brought two of his students to assist them from Firebird. And then later we were able to have a whole host of artists such as Cedric Mitchell, who will be here later this year, Sarah Beth, and a bunch of other amazing individuals who were able to come out and participate in this residency. We even were able to bring Thurman out of retirement, and he came out and was our first auctioneer. He made a bunch of pieces, and through his support in auctioning and his donation of pieces, we've been able to kind of create a little bit of an endowment for this program, and hopefully it will live on for many, many years. So on that line of talking about kind of the Black Glass Artist Series, my professor and now I guess collaborator, Angus, we ended up starting to lecture on how students can create moments of collaboration with their educators. Because oftentimes I think when you're an undergrad, there's this kind of feeling of separation from your faculty. And so trying to be able to kind of bridge that gap so that students have more autonomy and kind of feel like they are more empowered to do work that they are excited about. So through that, I have been able to now go around the country and lecture on how to create these moments of collaboration. This is me at UTA. They are an amazing group of students there, and they killed it and did an amazing job. We ended up making a collaborative piece. And then lastly, another aspect of my social practice is co-facilitating the Geeks Community Table Talk, which was started by Helen Lee. And so I'm just one facet of the amazing Geeks organization, which I totally recommend looking up, and all the stuff that they do. But what I do as a co-facilitator is I can help organize the groups that they have there, specifically for emerging and students who are in school who are a part of the BIPOC community, kind of using it as a way to network and Skillshare. And I think this is the last slide. Lastly, I've recently been able to join into the Better Together Artist Collective, where they go over and take over different studio spaces and just show up and produce work. And so that was started by Corey Pemberton and Cedric Mitchell, and Sarah Beth is on their social media team. And this was this past summer at the BIPOC, or specifically the Better Together residency at Penland, where they took over both the glass and ceramic studios. And I think that's everything. Any questions? Yeah, sure. So your question was, what was the role of innocence in childhood and how it plays into my work? I think oftentimes the alien is a really, especially the aliens that I create, are a very soft metaphor for my own feeling of otherness, but they're more palatable. The bright colors, the really round eyes kind of entice people in. But I think oftentimes when people take the time to sit with my installations and my work, I think that kind of those more deeper layers start to peel through. And so that's what I hope. And so kind of using this kind of cutesy, bubbly aesthetic is the way I kind of pull people in before I catch them with my hopefully deeper ideas and themes. Mm-hmm. Yep. Mm-hmm. Oh, so how has my art practice kind of changed over the years since grad school? So I actually have never been to grad school. I've only done undergrad. But how has it changed? I think it's the main way that it's changed is I'm writing a lot more than I ever have. I think in undergrad, going to Alfred, we have an amazing studio space. And so you're just producing, which is incredible. We're also having critiques, but one of the beautiful things about the space is like we have everything. We have glass, we have metal, we have wood. So you can like be up until 3 a.m, run to the wood shop, finish up a jig, then run to the glass blowing studio, blow some glass, then go over and weld some stuff. And so now, living where I live in West Virginia, I have a little bit less access to those things. So oftentimes I'm producing the glass, I'm sitting on it, I'm writing about it, then I'm going to make the wood, I'm sitting on it, I'm writing about it, and then kind of taking all those individual elements and putting them together. So I think it's made me be a lot more thoughtful and intentional on how I utilize time and how I'm thinking about materials. Mm-hmm. Yep. Mm-hmm. So the question is it challenging kind of translating things from a 2D space to a 3D space as an individual artist and then collaborating with other people? I think it is challenging. I think for the longest time, because I identified as like a 2D artist, I think kind of bridging into like 3-dimensional spaces was challenging in terms of understanding proportions. And understanding, specifically with glass, like how much material you're going to need. I'm always a wimp, and I'm like, oh, this is enough glass, and it's never enough glass. It's like, you got to do one more dip. And so I'd say in that way, I think it's really challenging, understanding proportion. And then in terms of collaborating with other people, I actually think it's easier, because I think that when I've been able, especially here at the MOG, like being able to come in with my sketches and the team just being like, we can do that. We can figure it out. Especially, it was so funny when we did the car. It was really cool to see how the team had like thought about like 3 different ways to figure out how to make the car, but that was the way that we ended up kind of coming up with. And so just seeing how they kind of work through the steps, for me as somebody who is trying to learn how to be more 3-dimensional, it's been really helpful to kind of break it down in kind of small parts versus thinking about the overall final piece. I think sometimes, that for sure happens. Sometimes I look at it and be like, oh, that looks real different from my sketch. But I think what's beautiful about that is I think that's a really cool moment to kind of take things back to the drawing board and kind of like reassess how things are. Maybe it's reassessing how things are looking in the 2-dimensional space, and oftentimes it's also figuring out how things are going to change in the 3-dimensional space. So for me, like, I don't draw with any color. I love color in glass, don't like it in 2-dimensional spaces. So I think that's like one of the ways that like, I've been kind of pushed now in my 2D work to kind of use more color. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. So the question is like as a glass artist, one of like the techniques or ways of doing things that kind of really was eye-opening and like shattering. I would say like the problem solving. I think that's something that I love about glass. It's so community-centered problem solving, and hearing how people are like talking with one another to figure out how to kind of break down steps. I think seeing that and seeing the team here, they've worked together for so long, so like they're a well-oiled machine. They're like boom, 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 boom. But even seeing like them taking a step back of like, okay, we're looking at the proportions, we're looking at who's making what part, and kind of looking at those little steps, I think has, again, because I'm interested in community and conversation, I think that's something that I really have enjoyed. In the back? Do I publish my writing along with my glass art? Hopefully one day. I would love that. That would be amazing. My undergraduate thesis is published. So if you go to Alfred University, the library, I published my thesis there. And there might be some new stuff that's going out that's writing. So keep a lookout if you follow me on Instagram. But yeah, hopefully soon. Yeah. Do I have a piece that I'm most proud of and why? I would say it would be that Map of America piece, and the reason why is because it was one of those things that was so scrappy in terms of how I had to put it together. I ended up having to go through our schools, like all our like kind of small pieces of bullseye, and kind of figure out how I was gonna make squares. And so, you know, over a period of, I wanna say that whole year, I was making that piece, and it was ended up being over 1,000 glass faces to put that piece together. And so I think the process of having to kind of move slowly to get it come together, and then I didn't get to see it all put together until I finally installed it. So I think it was one of those moments of like, wow, it worked. It like actually happened. And then being able to sell that piece, like that felt really good after all that hard work. So I think because that was one of my first major pieces that I ever made and sold, I would say that's my favorite. Do I ever edit anything in my work after, since a lot of my glass art has to do with assembly? I would say for sure. I think a lot of the editing, it's kind of weird. It's like what is the saying of like, you know, when you leave the house, you like take 2 things off. I would say the way that I edit is I add more things, because oftentimes I feel like it's too plain or it's too empty. So I would say I would add more things, but I would also say I'm trying to get more into cold working. So hopefully the way that editing is happening is maybe it's grinding off a piece or adding and enameling onto vessels. And so trying to think about in the future of where I see my work going, I would say that editing, I think, will play a larger role than it does now. Any other questions? Well, it has been a pleasure, and thank you guys so much for coming to my artist talk.